Hello loves and welcome to today's video. As it is Pride Month, today I'm going to be giving you some book recommendations that are books that feature queer characters that I personally enjoyed, but I am going to separate them into two separate sections. So the first section of the video is going to focus more on light-hearted, happier stories, but then because horror is one of my favorite genres, I'm also going to do some recommendations that are more on the heavier side. I tried to avoid anything where the people were harmed specifically because they were queer, but they do have some heavier themes while also having queer characters. If you are someone who doesn't want to read about gay characters in terrible situations, you can skip the second half of this video, but there should still be something for you in the first half. The first fun queer recommendation book that I have is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is a romance book about a woman who falls in love with a ghost on the subway, the ghost also being a woman, and them developing their relationship together while being kind of displaced in time. This book is really good, especially if you like a found family trope, because in addition to developing the romantic relationship with the woman on the subway, the main character is also finding her place within her friend group and building relationships of a found family there. So I know that is kind of a stereotype that people in the LGBT community love a found family trope. So if that is something that you fall into the bucket for, I definitely recommend One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. The second recommendation is a 2-for-1, so both Bookshops and Bone Dust and Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Legends and Lattes is the first book, and then Bookshops and Bone Dust is the prequel, which was released second, but you don't really need to read them in order other than getting some of the more subtle hints. In these books, they are a cozy fantasy story. In Legends and Lattes, an orc has retired from the life of adventuring and has moved to the city to open the first ever coffee shop, and there is some drama with people preventing her from trying to operate, but nothing too over the top. Bookshops and Bone Dust has a bit more drama, and I personally preferred it. I thought that the stakes were a bit higher, but still fits within that cozy fantasy genre. It's the same orc character as in Legends and Latte, but this time it is still back in her adventuring days, and she has had an injury that she needs to stop in a small seaside town to recover from. There's a bit more focus on the adventure in this one, but both of them do feature that orc character in a relationship with a woman. I recommend both of these. I did really enjoy them. Next is a Stranger Things novel, and that is Rebel Robin by A.R. Capetta. So if you have watched the Stranger Things series, you are aware probably that the character Robin is a lesbian. This book is a bit of her backstory on how she came to realize that she was interested in women and how she came to terms with who she wants to be. This is aimed more at a YA audience, but I really enjoyed it. It is the kind of book that I wish had been around when I was a teenager, and I think it is still readable even if you are not a big fan of the Stranger Things show. If horror and mystery aren't really your thing, there's not that much of it in this book. It is more a coming-of-age story. So I would definitely recommend this, especially if you are more on the younger side. It is a really great book about finding one's identity as one reaches their teenage and adult years. And staying in books that are originally intended for maybe a bit younger of an audience, I would also recommend The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan. So this is part of the larger Percy Jackson universe. It focuses on one of the characters introduced in the original series, Nico D'Angelo, who is now a teenager where he was a child in the original series. And the plot is about how Nico has to go into Tartarus, the underworld, to try to save someone who was captured down there, and his companion throughout this journey is his new boyfriend. And while Nico is a son of Hades and is the dark emo kid, his boyfriend is a son of Apollo, which is all light and sunshine So they make really good counterpoints for each other, and I just thought that the relationship that they were building throughout this story was so sweet, and again, intended for a younger audience. And in someone who was in my teen years when it was starting to become more acceptable of those relationships, but prior to the big media boom that seems to be happening in recent years, it is so nice that these stories exist for younger people now. I would have loved to read these kinds of things when I was a middle grade or a teenager, and I think particularly those two books, even though they are intended for a younger audience, are still readable and enjoyable for an adult audience. And if you are someone trying to heal your inner child, they make a really good option. They are really enjoyable. So The Sun and the Stars by Rick Riordan and Rebel Robin by A.R. Capetta. Now we're going to return to some romance for the last two entries on my list. The first is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. Now this is more of a Christmas romance, so I don't know how much you'll want to read it in June with the nice sunny weather, but maybe put it on your list for the winter time. In this book, our main character is kind of down on her luck and in need of some money, so she agrees to marry a friend of hers so that he can get his inheritance, and then they'll divorce once all the money's gone through. They are fake dating, go to the Christmas family dinner, and realize that the sister of the man she just agreed to marry for money is the woman she had a one-night stand with last Christmas. I really enjoyed this one, even if I read it in a time that was not necessarily prime holiday romance. Definitely if you're looking for a fun queer romance, especially if you want to put one on your docket for the winter, Kiss Her Once for Me was a good time. And the last recommendations I have in the fun category is The Romance Recipe by Ruby Barrett, and then also a little bit The Friendship Study, also by Ruby Barrett. The Romance Recipe is a WLW romance about a restaurant owner who falls in love with this chef she saw on a TV competitions show and just slides into DMs and is like, hey, would you like to be the chef in my restaurant? And the chef agrees. They are kind of butting heads at work in terms of trying to keep this restaurant afloat, but then also falling in love with each other. There are some heavier themes in this in terms of bad relationships with parents, etc. It was so well written. It was spicy at times. I really loved this. It was one of the best books that I read last year, so I definitely recommend this. Now, The Friendship Study is also amazing. It is probably going to make it into my top books of this year. It is a male character and a female character in a relationship. However, the male main character is a bisexual man. That is something that I don't often see in books, and it is something that is explicit in the text. It is something that is discussed. So even though the relationship in this is from the outside heterosexual, I still think that if you're looking for a book that has male bisexual representation, which is a little bit harder to find, The Friendship Study I really enjoyed, so I would recommend that as well. Ruby Barrett is probably my favorite romance author, so I definitely recommend checking out her books. If you are someone who doesn't like darker themes in your queer books, this is the end of the video for you. Leave a purple heart in the comments so I know that you made it this far. If you are here for the darker stuff that just also happens to be queer, stick around. These recommendations are for you. The first book I'm going to recommend is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. So this book is about a lesbian couple, Leah and Miri. Leah goes on a submarine journey that's supposed to be like 3 weeks long, and then ends up trapped at the bottom of the ocean for 6 months. Miri, during that 6-month span, kind of has to come to terms with the fact that Leah's probably not coming back and starts grieving her. And then Leah does come back, but she doesn't come back the same as when she left. Something is very wrong with Leah when she comes back. So we get a switch between perspectives. We get Leah's perspective of what happened when they were trapped at the bottom of the sea. And then we get Miri's perspective of how she coped while Leah was gone. And then also how she is now coping with Leah being back, but not really back in the same way. This deals a lot with grieving for someone who is still there. There is body horror in here, and I enjoyed this a lot. So again, darker themes, but it is a queer relationship, and I would recommend this. It is definitely a story that has stuck with me. The next book is The Memory Librarian and Other Stories of Dirty Computer by Janelle Monáe. Janelle Monáe collaborated with a variety of different authors to write a series of short stories set in the same apocalyptic, futuristic world that the Memory Librarian album was set in. And a lot of these stories are focused on identity and what is considered dirty in a futuristic society. There are queer characters, there are trans characters. It is really good to engage with this content from a intersectional identity. I really enjoyed this collection, and I definitely thought it was a really good experience to engage with different authors, as each of the stories has a different author, as well as I am a Janelle Monáe fan. So this was a really good collection. It is a little bleak because it is a world where people are ostracized or their memories are wiped for being different, but definitely some really good representation in this book. The next recommendation is Mad Honey by Jennifer Finney Bolin and Jodi Picoult. This book is really good if you're trying to like subtly get your middle-aged mother to read something with some queer characters, because it is Jodi Picoult, one of those authors that always makes all of the lists. In this book, Mad Honey, the main character's son is being accused of killing his girlfriend, and she is staying with him throughout the trial process. We also get the past perspective of the son's girlfriend and the events that led up to her killing. There is queer representation in this, and then it is a little bit about the mother trying to understand that identity. I don't want to go too much further into details because it is treated as a plot twist. This one is a good entry point because it does have some moments where they are explaining some very basic terminology, but I will warn that there is death of a trans character in this, so this is something to be aware of going in if that's something you're not going to want to read. But I do think that the book treated the subject matter as delicately as it could have. It does have some very basic explanations in it that I think if you have an older relative who you're maybe trying to get to expand their horizons a bit more, this is a really good option to kind of sneak that in there. My next recommendation is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. This is about a girl who's in a very religious community, and all of a sudden she starts like spewing bugs out of her mouth and seeing like demons. And she ends up going to this camp, Damascus, and trying to figure out if her previous attendance at this camp is connected to all of the things that are currently happening to her. Now, this book does have themes about like conversion camps, which is why it's on the darker list here. I did really enjoy this book as something that was definitely condemning of those ideas and not supportive of them, and also just a very relatable main character for me specifically. And definitely if you grew up with maybe some religious trauma and wanted a book that kind of pokes fun at some of that stuff, I really enjoyed Camp Damascus for that. The next book, also a horror, is Monstrilio by Geraldo Samano Cordova. This is a book about a woman whose son dies very young, and she learns of this urban legend that if you keep a piece of them in a jar, that you can kind of preserve them. And she starts feeding a piece of his lung until it fully grows into a tiny little monster that they call Monstrilio. And when I tell you not a single main character in this book was straight, it was just like, oh, we started with a married couple and their son. and then the married couple splits, and each of them goes into a queer relationship, and then the mother is also in a queer relationship, and then Monstrilio also in a queer relationship. Not a single character in this book was straight. Similar to Our Wives Under the Sea, this book is very much about the grieving process and kind of the question of whether Monstrilio is actually her son, even when he does monstrous things. I really enjoyed this one. The queer relationships are not the focus of this book, but like I said, not a single character was straight. If you want something dark with characters that just happen to be queer, Monstrilio. And my final recommendation is actually a manga series, and that is My Brother's Husband by Gengoro Tagami. In this book, our main character is a Japanese man, and he had a brother who moved to Canada. Then his brother passes away, and he finds out that his brother had a husband, and that husband is going to come to Japan to visit and meet his daughter. And it is about this Japanese man coming to terms with how he was culturally raised to see gay people, and coming to terms with the fact that his brother was gay, and then also dealing with the cultural shock of this very loud Canadian man staying at his home. The first book does have some homophobia in it, but it is about the growth of that person growing past it. So definitely by the end of it, I was crying in a good way. Because it has the homophobia, it fits on this list, but really it is more of a lighthearted, they go out for noodles together and they go to a hot spring. It's not anything in the subject matter that's dark. It is just a bit more blatant homophobia than anything else that I've had on this list. And that is my final recommendation for this Pride Month. So if you made it to the full end of this video, leave a pink heart in the comments so I know who made it this far, and let me know some of your Pride Month book recommendations, as I'm always looking for more books with LGBT characters. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like or subscribing so you can see more of my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great Pride!